In the summer of 1942, while the world was absorbed in the chaos of World War II, a quiet coastal town in Mississippi faced an entirely different kind of threat. One that didn't come from overseas enemies or the battlefield, but from within its own darkened streets. This strange threat was not a murderer, not a thief, and not a spy, though many wondered whether he could have been all three. Instead, Pascagoula gained a phantom, a silent intruder who crept into homes in the dead of night with a bizarre, unsettling mission: to cut the hair of sleeping victims. To this day, the case remains one of the strangest and least understood crime mysteries in American history. The figure became known as the Phantom Barber of Pascagoula, a name still whispered among true crime enthusiasts and historians who specialize in unsolved cases. What made the barber so terrifying was not the physical harm he caused, but the psychological dread he cultivated. His crimes made people afraid to sleep, afraid to keep windows open in the southern heat, afraid that the soft sound of rustling in the night meant he was already standing beside their bed. The town was deeply involved in wartime production. Its shipyards were working around the clock, producing vessels for the U.S. Navy. Soldiers, sailors, and workers filled the streets. Curfews, rationing, and rumors of enemy submarines off the Gulf Coast contributed to a heightened sense of vigilance. In such an atmosphere, an intruder who could slip invisibly into locked homes added a new layer of fear to an already anxious population. Wartime stress blurred the lines between paranoia and reality. People were constantly reminded to look out for spies and keep quiet about military matters. So when a shadowy figure began appearing in bedrooms at night, many wondered whether he was connected to espionage or sabotage. The ordinary act of cutting hair, something that should have been harmless, took on a sinister quality. The Phantom Barber's first known incident reportedly occurred in early June 1942. Two young girls, Mary Evelyn Briggs and Edna Marie Heidel, were asleep in the convent of Our Lady of Victory Catholic School. At some point during the night, someone slipped into their room and cut several inches of hair from their heads. The girls were unharmed. They didn't wake up during the intrusion. But when they rose the next morning and saw the uneven cuts, panic spread quickly through the convent. At first, some thought it must have been a prank by someone they knew. Hair cutting wasn't inherently violent, but the more they examined the room, the more unsettling details emerged. A window screen had been sliced open. The marks were precise. Whoever entered was careful, deliberate, and experienced in quiet movement. Nothing was stolen. No object was disturbed. Only the hair, soft, feminine, and symbolic, had been taken. Just a few days later, another incident occurred. A 6-year-old boy named Robert Lyons awoke to find someone standing near his bed. Before he could scream, the figure fled, and Robert realized a lock of his hair had been cut. This time, the victim saw the intruder, a small, agile man who slipped through the window and vanished into the night. At this point, Pascagoula began to panic. The police increased patrols. Citizens began locking windows, arming themselves, and sleeping lightly. Many feared for their daughters, convinced that the hair theft might be a prelude to something far worse. The Phantom Barber's visits became more aggressive as the summer wore on. In one incident, he entered the home of the Heidelberg family. Lillian and her husband woke to the sound of movement. When Lillian rose to investigate, the barber struck her across the face with a heavy iron bar. She survived, but the violent escalation stunned the town. Now the intruder was no longer a harmless oddity, he was dangerous. Yet even during this attack, a detail stood out. He still stole hair. A lock of Lillian's hair was found missing after the incident. Why would someone risk so much for such a strange trophy? By July 1942, the town was consumed with speculation. Newspapers carried bold headlines: "Phantom Barber Strikes Again." Radio programs discussed the attacks. Doors were bolted shut. People placed makeshift alarms, pots, bells, and wires on windows and doors. Theories ranged from the absurd to the chilling. Some thought it was a hairdresser with an obsessive compulsion. War stress could have triggered strange behavior. Hair contains DNA today, but even then, people imagined nefarious biological schemes. Obsessive interest in hair is known in some forms of psychiatric pathology. A few locals blamed spirits or demons, especially after the violent escalation. No one theory satisfied all the evidence. On August 5, 1942, police arrested a German-born chemist named William Dolan. Authorities accused him of being the Phantom Barber and claimed he was also responsible for the attack on the Heidelberg family. A pair of heavy iron bars found near his home were used as supposed evidence. But the case was weak. Dolan had no hair in his possession. He had no documented history of breaking into homes. There was no clear motive. Many believed his arrest was driven by wartime anti-German sentiment rather than solid investigative work. Even more suspiciously, after Dolan was imprisoned, the haircutting incidents did not fully stop, though they became less frequent. Some questioned whether there had been more than one Phantom Barber, or whether any of the crimes had been correctly linked at all. Years after the events, Dolan maintained his innocence. His supporters pointed out that he was a chemist with steady employment, not a disturbed nocturnal prowler. The prosecution seemed motivated more by the need to reassure the panicked town than by conclusive evidence. To this day, many historians believe the real Phantom Barber was never caught. The most unsettling part of the case is the motive. Why would someone risk their life to cut hair from sleeping victims? Criminal psychologists have offered several theories. Serial offenders often take objects, jewelry, clothing, photographs, to relive their acts. Hair is an intimate trophy. It carries a part of the person's identity. Entering someone's bedroom while they sleep is an extreme violation. Taking hair emphasizes dominance without physical harm. Some individuals develop paraphilic interests in hair. Cutting it becomes an act of compulsion. It's possible the intruder was mentally affected by war pressure, rationing, or military service. Some criminals thrive on the terror they instill. The oddness of the barber's actions made him more frightening. Despite these theories, none fully explain the barber's escalation to violence or his decision to remain non-lethal. The Phantom Barber case faded as the war ended and Pascagoula returned to normal life. But it left a lasting impact. The story influenced local ghost tales, especially those involving bedroom intrusions. Historians cite it as an example of wartime hysteria intersecting with criminal behavior. True crime communities often treat it as one of the strangest unsolved patterns of intrusion in the U.S. The case has become a symbol of how fear itself can shape public memory. The idea of someone silently slipping into your room while you sleep is terrifying enough. But someone doing so simply to cut your hair? That pushes the case into a uniquely disturbing category, one that suggests the intruder was driven not by rage or greed, but by something far more unusual, something chaotic, compulsive, or deeply psychological. Decades later, the Phantom Barber remains a puzzle because his crimes were unique. There is no clear pattern in criminal history that matches them exactly. He left no fingerprints and never harmed most victims. The escalation from haircutting to physical attack remains unexplained. The suspect jailed for the crime may have been innocent. No motive was ever confirmed. Ultimately, the case survives because it lives in our imagination. Unlike killers or thieves, the Phantom Barber stole something symbolic: privacy, safety, and peace of mind.